That would take us back to the 1980s, when Epstein started doing work for Les Wexner. Now, Les Wexner is arguably the most influential person in Epstein's life. He is Epstein's largest benefactor, the person who changed the trajectory of his career more than anyone else, because it is from Wexner that Epstein managed to extract $200 million in payments, arguably maybe some stolen funds, who knows, as well as a whole plethora of real estate assets. And Wexner has claimed that his relationship with Epstein started when he received a recommendation, a reference for Epstein from Ely de Rothschild, who was in his 60s or 70s at that point, and claimed that Epstein had done work for his family. This would be the early, mid-80s. Epstein had been a banker at Bear Stearns, left, been involved in a Ponzi scheme that ultimately blew up. I don't know the exact timeline here, but what work he had done for the Rothschild family at that point is entirely unknown and entirely unclear. And then there's Edmund de Rothschild. What's fascinating about Edmund de Rothschild, father of Benjamin de Rothschild, father-in-law to Ariane de Rothschild, that I can find virtually no reporting, no accounting of a relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Edmund de Rothschild. It's frankly made more complicated by the fact that Edmund de Rothschild is also the name of the bank, the group that is now run by Ariane de Rothschild, so it makes the SEO, it makes Googling about that relationship a little bit trickier. Regardless, I can find nothing about it. And yet, early on, when Epstein was first grooming, when he was first collecting Ariane de Rothschild in 2013, he emails her to tell her very clearly that he doesn't want anything from her. He's just looking to be her friend. He has no financial interest in her. Of course, he'll ultimately end up extracting $25 million from her. He's very good at what he does. But he wants nothing from her. He is simply doing this. He wants to be her friend because he owes a debt to Edmund. Almost certainly Edmund de Rothschild. Interesting. What is a debt so large you will spend years for free advising somebody about how to structure their bank, how to do deals, how to navigate legal challenges with other branches of the family, et cetera, et cetera. Now, it could also be the case that Epstein was simply saying this as a manipulation tactic. This is what's so tricky about trying to parse through all this information, right? It may have been that he wanted to preemptively ward off any suspicion Ariane de Rothschild might have had about Epstein's motives in their relationship. And he was able to ward that off by saying, I owe a debt to your father-in-law. Who knows? The next Rothschild that matters here is Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. Lynn Forrester to start. Now, Lynn and Jeffrey seem to have a very close relationship in the 1990s, which she has, of course, like everyone, fully tried to distance herself from at this point. But consider these facts. Ghislaine Maxwell, take her word however you want to, she said in her interview with Todd Bland, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, she said last year, there were other people that Epstein would assist. I know that he helped Lynn Forrester, who became Lynn de Rothschild. She'll deny it, and she has, but she can't. I have no idea what he did for her. I know he helped her financially. Her husband was the controller of New York, but I don't know. Again, I'm not inside his business, blah, blah, blah. So Lynn de Rothschild has, of course, denied this and denied that he gave her any sort of financial help. But Ghislaine is not the only one citing the fact that they had a very close relationship. Alan Dershowitz, the incredibly controversial Harvard law professor who ultimately defended and represented Jeffrey Epstein during his 2008 plea deal, sweetheart plea deal, in which the real specifics and the depth of the sex trafficking that he and Ghislaine had been involved in was completely swept under the rug. That was orchestrated in no small part by Alan Dershowitz, his lawyer at the time, very, again, successful, controversial lawyer at Harvard Law. Dershowitz says that he met Epstein in the 90s through his friend Lady Rothschild, the former Lynn Forrester. Moreover, the New York Times reports that Epstein's first known connection to Microsoft dates to 1996, when there was a gala thrown there, and Lynn Forrester, Lynn de Rothschild, brought Mr. Epstein as a guest. And now, the Microsoft-Epstein relationship is such a pivotal and important one for Epstein through the years. Of course, you have the Bill Gates connection there. But it wasn't just Gates. Steve Sinofsky ran Microsoft Windows, became a close confidant and pawn as part of Epstein's world. I mean, Microsoft, more than almost any other company, was one in which Epstein was able to very thoroughly penetrate it. And the origin of that relationship is tied back to Lynn Forrester, ultimately Lynn de Rothschild. So if you're keeping track at home, we now have Rothschilds who have some role in introducing him to Les Wexner, his largest benefactor, Alan Dershowitz, his attorney, Microsoft, his largest corporate connection, I would argue. And that's all before you get to the fact that Epstein himself claims that he owes a large debt to Edmund de Rothschild, the relationship about which that relationship we know almost nothing. And this brings us to Ariane de Rothschild, the relationship about which we know the most because it began in the email age, unlike the other relationship. And Epstein and Ariane met in 2013. They were introduced by a Norwegian diplomat and a man named Olivier Collomb, who was an advisor to Nicolas Sarkozy of France. And immediately in the emails, you can see Epstein senses opportunity. Epstein senses potential because he puts in a lot of work, again, for which he is not being paid, in cultivating that relationship and making Ariane feel good and feel valued. At one point, shortly after they first met, a couple months within meeting, Olivier emails Epstein and says, "What did you do to Ariane?" To which Epstein responded, listened. Olivier said, "She loved it, and you put her finger on the things that matter to her." If this is not a perfect distillation of what Epstein did brilliantly well, I don't fucking know what is. First of all, listened. I mean, how goddamn basic, but it is amazing how few people can do that well. And then what did he do? He was able to really figure out what she cared about, what she wanted to hear, what mattered to her, where her pain points are. And he started to help to solve them, or give her the impression that he was helping to solve them. Because this is a really important point that gets lost, but Epstein gave these people actual advice. This notion that like, how did he make this money? It's all nothing but shady. It's not true. It's not true. He was giving a lot of advice. And you understand, once he had his foothold in this elite world, then he would pick his targets. You can see it. You can see it in the emails. And he would care about them and tend to them. Within the first month of meeting Ariane de Rothschild, she mentions her neck hurts in an email. A couple days later, he emails her, "How's the neck?" He's checking on the micro little things, seeming like he cares, seeming like a friend. And then he's also sending her thoughts on how to restructure the bank. He's telling her he's put a lot of thought into a strategy she could use. Let's get on the phone. Most of the emails are about coordinating phone calls. They get very personal. Her husband is a drug addict running the bank until she takes it over. She's stressed about her husband. She shares that stuff with Epstein. He creates an environment in which she feels safe. He says, "I'm listening. There's nothing you could say to shock me." Like, he's saying things that you know feel comforting to this woman who is used to people wanting something from her when they help her. And he positions himself as somebody who's not looking for that. He's not looking for that. Until he is looking for something. In 2014, 2015, the DOJ, the American Department of Justice, starts sniffing around Edmund de Rothschild Bank, a number of foreign banks, Swiss banks in particular, and going after them for their role in helping wealthy Americans hide assets in Swiss banks, thereby avoiding taxes, and money laundering. And when Edmund de Rothschild becomes one of the banks in the DOJ's crosshairs, Ariane de Rothschild immediately turns to Jeffrey Epstein, who in turn introduces her to Catherine Rumler. Now, I want to say a word about the people that Epstein introduces to de Rothschild. Because, well, as I say, he is doing legitimate work for these people. Ariane de Rothschild, many of his other contacts, that's very clear. It is also true that sex is at the center of his most prominent relationships. It's not with Ariane, it's not with the women, but with the men. Within the first 3 months of meeting Ariane de Rothschild, he offers to introduce her to 10 different people, or nine or 10 different people. Of these 9 or 10 people that he offers to introduce her, 7 are men who he has entrapped for their sexuality in some way or another. This ranges from men who I think were actually involved in his sex trafficking to simply men who were philandering, who were cheating on their wives, and Epstein helped cover it up, or Epstein knew about it. 7 of them, though, fall in that category. And all 7 of those men are men he also had business relationships with or legitimate relationships with. So there's a nuance here, but sex is still at the center of it. And those are the men he felt most comfortable offering up, the people he clearly felt close enough to say, hey, I can make this happen on a dime.